If you have the wrong wants and needs, it's because you're valuing something incorrectly. And now my persuasion is to help you see the value from this different perspective. So you've got to step away from what you're thinking, because what you're thinking is wrong. That value is incorrect. This value is more valid. And so let me help persuade you by protesting, by writing this sign that says whatever it says, to help convince someone on the street that sees it that there's a higher value here. So let us begin. I'm introducing you or bringing you into a conversation in this Do You Have a Minute podcast. And we welcome all of you in joining us, where I speak with my daughter and we have these in-depth dives into topics and ideas. The topic today, the idea we'd like to discuss, is needs and wants, desires, and everything. Wants would be the primary word. What do you want?
I want to finish this conversation. Just kidding.
We want to be done. Okay, so there's a want. You have certain time demands in your wants. Then.
Why would you start something if you didn't want to finish it at some point, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
We want to finish this conversation, but we have realistic, you realize what's around that. So that's a great example. We know we're going to finish this in 2 hours.
Approximately, yeah. Might take longer.
We want to be done. We want to move to the next thing. And we maybe want so much to be done that we're working on other things while we're doing this. Appropriately?
Yes.
Because you want something else too. You want to finish that item you're working on.
Yes, I'm knitting something and I do want to finish it. And the only way I'm going to finish it is if I work on it when I'm doing other things. Nobody sits down to knit and only knit. Never happens.
Okay. That's like all of you others that are listening to this podcast. You're not just sitting here listening to this podcast. You're doing other things.
Likely, yeah.
That's, you want to listen to it, but in order to do it. So when you want something, how do we identify that?
Like, what do you mean when you want something? Are we trying to define what a want is?
Yeah. What is want?
It's a desire.
Do you want something to do?
If there's something missing, then that thing is wanted. Maybe.
For want of something is how they say.
Or an experience was left wanting.
It's missing, or it's that you didn't enjoy the full benefit of the experience. It was left wanting. If you're in want of something, it means you don't have it right now. You want it.
And sometimes you have something, but you want more of it.
You still want it. I have it, but I still want it.
I want.
So I'm going to keep it.
I want it more. Or I'm going to keep it. I want my dogs. If I didn't want them, I'd probably get rid of them. I have them, and I continue to want them.
You keep the things you continue to want.
Yeah.
So you're talking about wants. Wants it's a fairly simple word. Does it have any bigger meaning to it? That's what I'm trying to see. And the bigger meaning is it's what you hold. Your priorities. So is want a priority?
I think it's a part of having priorities. I don't want any more dresses than what is in my closet, because I have enough and my priorities in my life don't necessitate more than what I've got.
You have sufficient.
Yes.
So you want them. You still want that.
I want the ones that I
clothing.
have. I just don't want more than that.
You have sufficient amount. Yeah. You don't want another. You don't want more.
Yes.
You do want them because they're sufficient. So there's a delineation to what your wants are. You don't have an unlimited want for something. You limit your wants.
Yeah, my wants are limited. I don't want more than the dogs that I have.
Yeah. You don't want 6 or 7.
No. I just want these 2.
And then you have that cat that serves as a dog as well.
Practically.
Do you want more cats?
I don't want more cats, but other people in my house do. And so I want them to be happy and fulfilled. And I wonder if
you could potentially want another cat.
In a roundabout way. I wouldn't want the cat. I would want what happens because of the cat.
Because the cat shows up. The enjoyment of someone else's want, you would prioritize.
Yeah.
So you can prioritize people's wants.
Now, if I didn't want a cat, if I wanted no cat, no more cats.
Correct.
That would be...
Like, say that it's in my house and I want no cats.
Yeah, that would be different. I wouldn't prioritize their wants over my want for no cat.
Of no cat. Okay. How strong are wants? You can prioritize it, but they have a strength too. They have an order of magnitude.
They're on a spectrum of weak
a value
to strong.
A value spectrum. Yeah. So if you have a very strong value that you want chocolate in your house, and you need chocolate milk and chocolate cookies and chocolate chips, what do you call that? If you desire a certain type of food, it's a what?
It's a hankering for something. And it's not that, though. It's
hankering.
What is it? What is it when you're...
It's not an addiction.
It's not. There's a
craving.
word.
A craving.
Yeah. That's what they call it.
Yeah. If you have a craving for something, and that's fleeting, your want can be fleeting. It can change. Today I'm craving salmon.
Yeah. Oh, yesterday I was craving pickle spears, but the ones that we have were spicy. Like
I'm thinking some crazy flavor.
They called them zesty on the jar. I think we got the wrong kind. They were zesty pickle spears.
Okay.
And I'm like, I actually don't want this anymore.
That ruins it for the dill pickle flavor.
Yeah.
So you wanted something, but it wasn't exactly what you wanted.
I thought that I had
those people who
yeah.
who love the zest. And that's a new word that's come out. I've learned that I don't want anything that has the word zesty on it.
Really? Because it actually means spicy?
It means spicy. It means hot. You've got some hot in there. It's like zesty ranch is not ranch dressing.
It's not.
It's spicy dressing.
Zesty
It's
ranch.
That's how it caught me that one time.
I went to get some Thai food with a sister and her husband over the weekend. We got some curry and whatever. My favorite Thai food is yellow curry. It's not spicy. Maybe it has just a teeny bit of spice, but it's delicious. Anyway, but my sister, she got the level 10 spicy noodles, like rice noodles with, I don't even know what it's called, but she got the spiciest they could give her. And everybody at the table was like, you really, really want to do this? And she's like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. And even the waitress was like, really? Really? Level 10? So she got it and she was eating it and she was totally fine. Like nothing.
It was okay.
I had a bite of it because I was like, well, it can't be that spicy if it's not affecting you at all. And it killed me. My face was on fire. I think my tongue...
So you don't want that either.
My tongue was hurting for like 3 days after. Yeah, I don't want that.
Huh.
No spice.
I did experience that once. At a Chinese food place, the hot mustard. We were having pork and seeds, and so we were there with another couple, but I just dipped it in the hot mustard, and I took more hot mustard than I usually did, but I just put it in my mouth, and my whole head turned hot.
Yeah, your ears.
It went from my mouth all the way to the top of my head, my ears and top of my head. It was I said, this is weird. I never felt that before, but that's why I don't want hot stuff. And I put way too much mustard. Don't do that. And so I drank a lot of the drink and ate another, crackers or whatever it was to calm that. So wants are on a spectrum of value. You value them. You have a higher value or lower value to wants.
Do you think that you could just not want something that you wanted before? Like you make a decision not to want something anymore?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, if you can make a decision to think about something differently, that's essentially the same thing.
And let me use that idea of cats. I don't necessarily don't want cats. In my house, my wife does not want cats.
Yeah, you had a farm cat.
That's probably a higher value. That's probably a higher value for her than for me. And I don't have any internal drive to not or to do have cats or dogs. I could have a dog or I could not have a dog. I'm okay. Either way. Your wants, I think, can be described that way. Do you want a dog? Sure, I want a dog. But I don't want one so much that I'm going to give up anything else to get it. Or I can live with a cat. I could eat. What that was from a movie one time. Are you hungry? I could eat.
Uh-huh.
I don't necessarily want to, but I could. So let's go eat. If you want to eat, I'll be happy to.
Aren't you allergic to cats, though?
I don't think so.
No?
It might just be something that we've always talked about. I don't know that I'm allergic to anything. I don't know that I want to worry. Hey, I don't want to worry about that, whether I'm allergic to something or not. Bee stings. I haven't been stung by a bee in probably 20 years because I've known that it did put me in the hospital at one time. So I'm probably allergic to, so I don't want to get stung by a bee again.
Yeah, you want not to.
But if I do, I doubt that it will kill me. I mean, it was really interesting. I was working out and the hornet stung me right at the back of my neck, right on my spinal cord. And so it took whatever the poison directly into everything. And so that's what hospitalized me for a day to get that cleared up.
I imagine that even if someone that's not usually allergic to bee stings, being stung in specific spots would be worse.
It would travel faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, just where I was stung traveled it faster. If I get stung on my hands, it just swells up my hand and my arm, but it doesn't get into my lungs and my breathing. And that time it affected my breathing and it was really weird. And they say it gets worse over time. And so from that point on, I haven't been stung. I watch more carefully. So I want to not be stung. And I think that has a higher priority to me than wanting an animal or a dog or wanting to. The want thing is on a value system and it helps your priorities and helps your values. You value something higher, so that helps your priorities. You can prioritize the things you value more. If someone else values eating, I'm hungry, I want to go eat, I could eat, I'll go with you. That's fine. Let's do it. Or I'll help you cook it, or I'll cook you a meal. What do you want? Do you want salmon? We'll make salmon and vegetables. You want me to make it? Okay, I'll make it. I'm happy with that. If you can talk about wants, that's a valid way to discuss things.
I wonder if there is conscious wants and like physical wants that you aren't conscious about, like needing food.
Assumed wants? Well, need is the other word. I want to get to that, but I don't want to.
Oh, it's different from, okay.
A need is different from a want. So you're identifying that, you're pulling that in, but that's still a necessity. That's a want. You want to breathe and eat. But you said unconscious wants. Do you have wants that you don't really verbalize, that you're not consciously wanting it, but do you want something? Do you have want for things that you haven't verbalized yet?
Maybe not, because if there was, then they would turn into needs.
And that's maybe the difference between a want and a need. A need is something that is necessary.
Whether you think about it or not, it's necessary, yeah?
Yeah, you need oxygen. You need your lungs to operate. You don't necessarily want them to operate, but you need it because you need it. It's going to operate anyway, whether you consciously observe it or not. Whether you notice it, it's happening. So it doesn't become obvious. Wants become obvious. Are all wants obvious then? Do you obviate? When you obviate something, bring it to your consciousness, to your opening, then it becomes a want. I need food. I know I need food, but I'm not necessarily hungry, so I don't want food yet. But if I get to the point that I'm hungry, then I want food also. I know I need it, but I also want it. So now let's do it because I want it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have the food unless you wanted it at some point. I mean, well, and you were saying I could eat. That person could want to eat.
Yeah. And you have to want to eat in order to eat. I guess there are people who have aversions. If you have an aversion to something that you don't want, you're not necessarily going to do it. They will have to force you. Like cleanliness, washing your hands. Some people wash their hands all the time. They want to. And some people want to not wash their hands all the time. So if you don't want something, you have an aversion to it.
Or if it's neutral, though, like I don't have an aversion to more dresses. I just don't want more dresses. I don't have an aversion to more dogs. If a dog fell in my lap and I had to take another dog in, it's not that I didn't.
I have a good idea then. There's a really nice blue healer that needs to be at your house.
Oh, great. It needs to fall into my lap.
Yeah, it'd do very well with your two dogs.
What I really want to know is, why does its owner not have it?
Yeah, that's what falling into people's laps means. Is it? It's a question. They want it. If you want something, but you can't take care of it where you're at, but you still want it, then you have to see if someone else wants to help you take care of it.
Yeah, and you did that for me for like a year. That was really a big thing. So I suppose it's okay that they're also taking advantage of you in that way.
Take advantage of the hospitality of someone else who doesn't necessarily not want it. I wouldn't go out and go through any effort to gain the dog or the responsibility, but I'm okay taking the responsibility. It's fine. I want, and again, if that's the pleasure of someone else, the want of someone else, you're prioritizing their wants. They want to keep that dog. So wants and needs. You have certain needs that are, maybe those are the unconscious things. What you need may be unconscious, and maybe it is only unconscious. Can you need something consciously, or can you only want it consciously?
Well, goodness, what is strong enough? What's a strong enough want that it turns into a need?
That is a need. Yeah.
Like, we need an income enough, but that's because we need food, so we want income. We want more income.
You can gain income from a number of different sources. There's a number of ways to do it. So if you want more, or you want your needs are beyond income, though. You could find some other way to meet those needs. You could just live in someone's house as a dependent. You could be a slave and have your needs met. You could be in prison, have your needs met.
Right. Like for my budget, I have necessities on there, things that we need, which is utilities and food, and we need to pay the mortgage, but those are really just wants, because the city,
you're building that.
The city
requires building your budget.
Yeah, the city requires that we live in a house. Like, isn't it illegal to be homeless? I think you're not allowed to sleep
to be in a tent
on the sidewalk.
You can camp out in your backyard, but you can't camp out as your house.
Yeah. Right.
Unless you live in Spokane or Portland or, those cities that are.
Yeah. Well, and there's, like, we could camp at the 14-day dispersed camping sites in the canyon. So maybe it's not illegal to live like the homeless. We just can't, there's certain places we can't sleep.
And the city would require that you build something. If you bought a building lot and just put a tent city on it, that would not meet city code, most likely.
Right. But I want to live in a house, and so I need to pay the mortgage.
Right. In your budget. Well, only because you want it. The need there is subservient to a want that you have. I want to be inside of a house that's roomy enough to operate in, so I need to build this size house, and we need to pay the mortgage. We need to contract a bank to help us.
And we need income to pay for that.
Right. And so those needs are subservient to the wants. Your whole budget, I think, is a want. Anyone's budget. We don't need to do a budget. There's no need for a budget. But the budget meets our wants. And the budget there's necessary parts of that budget if it's going to operate. It needs income.
Yeah, the budget needs income, but the budget is only there because you want it there.
Yeah, so that's because you want it. Is there any need? Well, what needs exist regardless of whether you want them or not? Are there needs? And that may be what you're talking about, unconscious needs.
Needs that don't have anything to do with any underlying wants.
With your want, or presupposed wants.
Yeah.
If you want something, you want to live in in a city, so therefore you need to operate based on the city's laws. Or you want to not live under city's laws, so you need to find a place in the county or in another country that doesn't have these type laws to live under. But it's only because you want to be under those laws or outside of those laws.
Well, physical needs then, does that just happen? Like, we have a need for nutrition in order to stay alive, but that's really just because we want to be alive.
If you decide that you don't want to be alive anymore, then
You don't need
there is
food anymore.
intervention to say, no, you need this. And so intravenously, we're going to make sure that you have sufficient for the need of staying alive. So you get intravenous feeding at the hospital or at the psych ward. They say you're not going to be allowed to go on a hunger fast to death. You can do it for 30 days, Gandhi, but you can't do it more than that.
Right. Other people step in because you're crazy if you don't want to be alive.
And that's based on the society, right? Those are the social laws, the rules of society that you're in, what area you're at.
I would argue then that needs are subjective. I mean, they're just as subjective as wants. Like, it all comes down to it. They're subjective because wants are subjective. One person doesn't need all of the same things that another person needs because their wants are different.
Yeah. So if it's all subjective, kind of like we were talking about truth, is there any objective? Is there any objective need? We're trying to identify if there's an objective need. You can choose to want it or not. And that's maybe faith is the idea. It's something that you don't know. You need something. If you're unconscious of it, it means you don't know. You're agnostic, don't have a full knowledge of it. So I believe that I need food. That's what everyone says. We need nutrition for the body to work. I can't prove it. And I don't necessarily want to prove it because I always feel better when I eat. So I'm going to continue to eat, but it's just a faith. It's an unconscious faith that is a fact.
Yeah. You don't think about it, so it's unconscious.
Right. And breathing is the most unconscious, well, not breathing, probably the most unconscious thing is the beating of our heart and moving the blood flow through your body. We can't even consciously do that. I guess there's some people who can consciously slow their heartbeat, but that takes a lot of work to get that done, as I understand it.
Right. And you're not thinking to your heart, okay, slow down. You're doing a lot of other things, which results in a slower heartbeat.
Could be. Yeah, most likely.
That's what I think.
Because that's an automatic automatic process that is happening that's necessary. It's a need that we have no control over whatsoever.
Yeah, the beating of our heart.
We do have full control over our wants. And if it's subjective, so here's the quandary in wants. If they are subjective, which we somewhat believe that everything is, how do you get along with anyone else?
There's another want there. If you want to get along with anyone else, then you subjectively and consciously adjust
your wants to something that's more appropriate, like living in a city. There's a number of people in this city that want these laws.
If you want something bad enough, you'd be willing to alter whether you wanted something else anymore. And
that's the prioritization based on your values. I think values are harder to change than priorities. So you identify your priorities, say, I really want this relationship more than I want that cat. So because I want this relationship, it's okay. I'll lower priority the cat, higher priority the relationship. And so consequently, I get 3 cats in the house. Something along that line. Or I have no cats because that person's cat priority is higher than mine. So you have to really, that relationship, communication between someone else is how high do you value this thing that we want? Both of us want it to different degrees on a spectrum of wants. And whose degree is higher for a positive action to it or a negative action to it? How do you decide that?
Right. And you can't just take in a desire for whatever it is. Like, that's not the only metric to consider, because there's also a desire for definitely not whatever it is. If I
the opposite
hate cats, then that kind of is heavier than if I just don't want cats.
Yeah. Well, the heaviest would be if you're allergic to it and it's not a possibility for you.
Well, that's the heaviest.
So there are those things that are completely, but if you hate it, like zesty foods, just hate zesty foods, can't handle it. I might die if I had it. Maybe not literally, but actually it's not going to be pleasurable at all. And it's going to upset my whole day.
I think people have actually gone into like cardiac arrest as a result of the spicy, like the ghost pepper challenge and stuff. Like it can be
Oh yeah, that's right.
harmful. So, but yeah, so it can kill you. Spicy food will kill you, provided it's spicy enough.
So depending on where you are on the spectrum, if it's a necessary, never touch it, then the person who says I could have it or not, automatically, based on the relationship, that it's easier to make the choice to forego what you desire as a want to someone else because their value is higher. They've got a higher value on it.
We're kind of talking about the win-win thing from the 7 Habits.
And you have to be on the win-win spectrum in order to even have that discussion.
Yeah, rather than saying, well, I'm gonna have this whether you want it or not, whether you hate it or not.
Yeah.
That's a win-lose.
That's a win-lose. Yeah. Or because you hate it so much, I'm going to do it.
Right.
I'm going to make you lose. What we learn from that always loses for both of you. Both of you lose if you're trying to make someone else lose. A lose-win or a win-lose. If you try to win and let someone else lose, you can't let someone else lose. You have to both, and it's not a compromise. It's not splitting the difference. It is both of you receive enough of a win to call it a win, a full win.
Right. And you both have to be in the win-win mindset, because if one person's like, well, I consider it a win if this option is the only option that I get. Like, I must have, what must you have? I must have chocolate in my house all the time. And it's only a win for me if I have chocolate in the house, regardless of whether you think that...
Chocolate in the house. Yeah, call it a candy drawer.
Okay, a candy drawer.
I've got to have candy bars of chocolate, and it's got to be a drawer full, and I have to have a variety. It's going to be like a store shelf in my house if I'm going to be happy.
And it doesn't matter if you like it or not. Any solution, any resolution that we come as to this issue of the candy drawer is going to have to result in me having a candy drawer. That's a lose. What is that? A win-lose or
a win-lose?
Yeah.
But is that a need? Okay, and that does go to this, what I wanted to talk about, needs. Needs have to be justified. So the win-lose, if you can call it a need, or if you do call it a need, there's a justification for it. In order to live, your heart needs to beat. So the blood flow of your body is necessary. It's a need. So a justification of that is, do you want to live? To live, you need your heart to beat. To live, you need oxygen to flow into your blood so that it can do that. So you need to breathe. That's a necessity. In order for me to be happy, breathing and living, I need to have candy. I need to have a candy drawer. I need to have chocolate, and it needs to be a variety. I need a variety. If you say need, then it requires a justification. And that's where the wants come in. Is it a need or a want?
What is the want behind this need?
Candy. Yeah.
Well, and maybe some psychologists would say, what is the need behind this want? You want a candy drawer so badly. What is the need that you're exhibiting? What happened in your childhood to where you need something and the candy drawer is the cure?
Represents that.
Maybe we have it backwards. Maybe wants are needs and needs are wants.
No, what does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, I'm just saying, like, I'm imagining a psychologist saying, what does this want of a candy drawer represent? What need does it represent? You need a constant supply of
chocolate.
Yeah, of comfort foods, maybe. Maybe the chocolate is your comfort food. So you need that. That's the need behind the candy drawer. And where did that come from? Why is that a need of yours? I don't know. I'm not.
So that's interesting. Is there anything that we need? It's interesting to talk about that, the candy drawer, but I don't know that either of us necessarily need a candy drawer. Is there something that you or I need that we can put in that same discussion? Because it'd be easier if we actually had that idea.
Right. Okay. So how about I need to drink 8 glasses of water every day?
8 glasses of water.
Yeah. But really that's a want, because the underlying need is hydration. is my body's, the underlying need is my body's need for hydration. And I can get that by eating just a whole bunch of watermelon. I don't need to be drinking the water. I could have watermelon instead.
Could have watermelon, oranges.
Yeah. So the want is water, but the need is hydration, right?
You want water, or you want cranberry juice, or you want orange juice, or you want milk.
Yeah. And maybe this is just
You want something.
being too specific about what I think that I need.
And there's different ways to figure out the water. I mean, you're supposed to drink the ounces of water that you weigh in pounds every day.
Yeah, I think it's 1 ounce per 2 pounds or 1 ounce per kilogram.
Okay. Half the ounces of water that you weigh.
Yeah.
From 190 to be 80 ounces of water a day. So that would be 4 20-ounce glasses every day.
You could do that.
And if you're eating 8 20-ounce glasses, that means you're 260 pounds.
So it depends on the size of the glass too. I think eight glasses of water, they're generally saying
they might not be 20 ounces.
These are 8-ounce cups.
Okay. All right. So 80 is appropriate for a 200-pound person, or 160. So there's an appropriate amount of water. So you need, and that's the justification. So that is probably a good example. The justification is, we know scientifically, or we subjectively know scientifically, that you need that much water in a day. You can objectively feel better because you drink more water. You can feel better when you drink more water. So you can test that out and say, maybe I'll drink less. See if I feel better if I drink less, or feel better if you drink more. And you can obviously identify that in your own life, that if you drink more water or get more fluids, you're going to be better off in life, healthier.
Yes. But lots of people don't drink what they need in quotes. And so really that need is a want. And what they really need is 1 cup of water a day to stay alive. Like, the need is to be hydrated so you stay alive. And our bodies can actually survive on much less than what the recommended amount is. You're just going to be kind of feeling crummy because of it. But the actual need is more like a cup, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. So I'm not but even the doctors don't know. I'm not God, so I can't say exactly how much my body really, really needs in order to stay alive. But I know that it's much less than 8 cups a day, because I frequently go for long periods of time without 8 cups a day. I have maybe 1 intentional cup of water a day, and then everything else comes from whatever food I eat.
Yeah. There's a justification for it. Still, you're justifying that maybe you only need 1.
Yeah, and maybe everything adds up to 8, which, would be surprising because my nutrition is just really bad anyway.
The psychologist that's talking about this is, what need is that representing? Does that want represent? So would there always be an underlying need to whatever we want? That's, I think, what you pointed to, are your wants needs. Your want actually identifies a need that you subconsciously are holding, and it's a need. And that subconscious holding of whatever it is creates your wants.
Yeah. So I want my husband to speak to me in my love language because I need love. Maybe? No?
Do we need love? Love.
Like, that's an underlying need. Everybody needs to be loved. They need that feeling of being loved.
Okay. We've got to reference back to what love is. When we started this a year ago almost, we discussed unconditional love and identified what that is. What you want is based on what you actually need. And you say you need it. And love, you can't give love to someone else. You have to only receive it. So it's what you want to receive. You need someone to speak so that you feel loved in a certain direction, order. That love is subjective. It's your choice as to whether you feel love or not.
Yeah. That maybe isn't what we're talking about, though.
And that's also the win-win idea. I mean, the person, your relationship partner, has to also want you to feel loved. And so you feel loved, so you've got to receive it.
Yeah. But does that change whether you need to feel loved or not? whether you want it or not, does that change whether you need it or not?
Like plants. Plants need to be talked to in order to be healthy.
No, they don't.
They need it.
Plants in the forest grow without being talked to. They do need sunlight in order to grow. Well, some of them do. Some of them, I suppose, get by without it.
And I think that is better. If you talk to your plants, they grow better. But the plants you don't talk to grow.
They grow anyway.
Fine. They grow with their one glass of water a day. But if you've talked to them, they'll get eight glasses of water a day, and they grow bigger and happier. Perhaps that's the same continuum, same difference. A forest that is managed and talked to grows better than a forest that is left fallow and just do what it does. You can manage a forest, and it's a beautiful place, and the trees all thrive. And the ones that you choose to live, you pare back the things that aren't right, and it allows the things that should be there to grow better. If you don't manage the forest at all, it just becomes a tangled mess, and then the wildfires come and burn it all down, and they manage themselves.
So what question could be solved by knowing the difference between needs and wants? Here's one, maybe, if you can't come up with one. What if somebody says that you should need something and you're just not needing it, or you should want something and you're just not wanting it? Is this a should versus ought problem?
The is-ought problem?
Not
is, loving what is?
Not is-ought, really.
Well, is-ought is the problem. Should-ought, you ought to do it, you should do it. And is, what are you doing? What is? So that's the is-ought problem.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. And that is loving what is, loving everything.
But really, like, what if one person is like, you all need to want, you all need to accept that fetuses are alive and you may not ever abort them. They are alive and they need to be born. Whether they die right after they're born or not, that you need to give them that chance. It needs to be not you that kills them.
And we believe that enough that we need to make a law. There needs to be a law.
And everybody needs to agree with that. Everyone needs to agree with that.
Everyone needs to comply, whether they agree or not, whether they have faith or confidence in it, they still need to comply to it.
Well, aren't
so agreement and compliance are different.
The protesters outside of the Planned Parenthood and all of that, aren't they out there trying to convince the other people that they're wrong and they actually need to want to save the babies rather than kill the babies? I mean, we had recently talked about protests, but ideally what a protest would do would change minds. Yeah?
Persuasion. They're using protest as a mode of persuasion and motivation to change someone's direction.
Yeah, I mean, if you see a sign,
and who wants something in that case? They're trying to identify the need or the want. The need is that the baby needs to live, or the baby needs to, the fetus. Yeah, the one side says that fetus has needs, and we're required to allow that fetus to be born, barring crazy circumstances that it can't be born, or there's other complications. There are always complications that allow something to not be, or require something to not be done. A higher value, a higher priority, or a more obvious priority.
Yeah, the question that I'm trying to ask, though, is what if someone else thinks that your wants and your needs aren't in the right place? They're wrong. You have the wrong wants and needs.
Which means you have the wrong value system. That's where that's the only place it can go. If you have the wrong wants and needs, it's because you're valuing something incorrectly. And now my persuasion is to help you see the value from this different perspective. So you've got to step away from what you're thinking, because what you're thinking is wrong. That value is incorrect. This value is more valid. And so let me help persuade you by protesting, by writing this sign that says whatever it says, to help convince someone on the street that sees it that there's a higher value here. Motivation. Let's talk about that, because you're trying to motivate someone to do something. I think it was in the 7 Habits book about motivation. I just looked at that the other day. I just have to say it. I can't find it
Well, it doesn't have an index
in
in the
my
back,
index.
doesn't it?
It does, and it has what I wrote in the front even. I can't remember exactly. The paraphrase of it is, satisfied needs do not motivate.
Okay, yes. That's like somebody needs to want something badly enough to work to get it.
To work, to be motivated to do something to gain it.
It needs
Once
to
you
hurt.
have it, then you're no longer motivated. And how did that come out? It's got to be in the win-win chapter here. It has to just be motivation. Yeah, there it is. It's satisfied needs do not motivate. He said next to physical survival. So physical survival is a need, he's pointing out. Next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival. And he talks about giving them psychological air. They need to be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, to be appreciated.
Those are needs.
And that gives you that psychological air of those things. Needs are to be understood, affirmed, validated, and appreciated. That gives a person psychological air. And then when that vital need is met, both the survival and the psychological, then you can focus on influencing or problem solving. So that's how he was describing that. That's how you get to the win-win.
Yeah, those are the needs behind the want to be able to influence them. If you want to influence them, they need those things. They don't necessarily need those things if you don't want to influence them, right?
In order to be motivated, well, if you're talking about influence as motivation, you want to motivate something, you're to influence or persuade. You're trying to motivate, trying to get someone on your side or get a win-win out of it. You want them to win, you want to win, and it requires that other person. So in order to do that, you do have to give that psychological air. You have to understand, affirm, validate, and what were they? Understand, affirmed, validate, and appreciate. You have to actually appreciate, align yourself with what they're doing. So to understand something.
Yeah, those are situation-specific needs. They're not like all the time needs.
Subjective, you're saying situation specific?
Yeah, if
They're not
I
objective?
didn't want to motivate or influence somebody, then they don't need those things from me.
Right.
I don't need to give them psychological
They don't need
air.
it from you, but they do need it from someone.
Everyone needs it
We
from someone.
can't do anything without being motivated to do it. That's what a want is. Isn't a want a motivation?
Yeah.
If you're not motivated to do something, you don't want anything. Say, I'm not motivated. I'm just going to sit here on this chair. I have no motivation. I have no wants. I want for nothing. I'm completely content where I am.
I said earlier that needs are completely subjective, but this is an example of a need that is not subjective. It's an objective need.
No, you said wants are subjective.
I said needs and wants.
Okay, and I believe that
because needs come from wants, that if I want to stay alive, then I need to eat food.
Then the needs are there. So you want to stay alive. If you want to pass away, then you need to get away from people because they won't let you pass away.
Right.
Yeah, your needs come from what your wants are. If you want to pass on, you can only do that if you're alone, because to receive help would be illegal. That would be something that the general society says, no, you can't help someone in that venture to pass on. If you help them, then you're at fault. And your needs are subjective too, then. I think survival, yeah, you're saying even survival is a subjective need. You don't have to want to survive. Because we want to survive, there's these needs, there's these necessities. So all of this is subjective. There's no objective. Is there an is then? Love what is. What is it that Byron Katie said? What's her book? Or
the is just how it is. It's not how you want.
It's the
Loving
objective.
What is. I haven't read the book.
The circumstance.
But is the objective, observable, testable? Yeah, the circumstance.
The circumstance exists, and you have to appreciate that it's there, but you don't have to be motivated by it. It's not a need. The fact the circumstance here, it's not a need that you have that. You want it. You have a thought about the circumstance. So your thought is either I want it or I don't want it. You go one way or the other with it.
Right. Then are we agreeing that it's all subjective then?
Yes, I think we are. You don't have, because the circumstance is inanimate. It's just there. The relationship is a circumstance. Your relationship with someone else. Our conversation here is just a circumstance. You have wants and I have wants. And sometimes, yeah, we have to pay attention to what the other one's saying in order to be effective.
If that's what we want, if being effective is what we want.
And if we don't want to be effective, let's say one of us comes with well, we're in this for a win-win. There's not a win-lose mentality. I'm not trying to make sure that my things come out on top, that I have the best. Yeah, that's what I've been accused of at times, that
Yeah.
you just want to spout your crazy ideas. And, we are talking about ideas, but your ideas are just as crazy as mine. Trying to identify that needs are subjective. That's something neither of us came to this conversation thinking. Would you agree?
Yeah. Because need, like the very word implies objective, like you need food.
Right.
But only if you want to stay alive. So.
And only if you want food at that time. You need food, but maybe only every once a day, perhaps, in a normal sense.
Yeah, there are certainly people living just fine on once-a-day meals.
Yeah. And maybe it's every third day that you could get by for a month. If you go on an extended fast, you can do an extended fast, go 7 or 14 days without food at all, just liquids. So those longer time things occur and people do them regularly.
And so it's not objective that everybody needs 3 square meals a day.
Right. And it's subjective as to what your goal is, what you want to accomplish, what you're trying to reach maybe in another avenue. So the win-win idea, though, you have to be able to serve someone's psychological error. That's where his description, Covey's description, was in relation to that, is how you get to that win-win idea or concept. You have to allow people, you have to feed them enough, understand them well enough before you try to be understood on your side. It's still your need to be understood, that psychological need. And one of you have to step out first and try to understand and then affirm, validate it, and appreciate it. To influence and persuade, you have to be able to do that first. This has to do with being meek as well, meekness. And I'm going to talk about this again. I've been thinking about that. That word comes up.
Neat?
Meek. Meek.
N-E-A-T?
No.
Meek. M-E-E-K?
M-E-E-K.
Okay.
Meekness, as opposed to, what's the opposite of meekness? Grandiosity, being the center of attention, being meek and lowly, or being grandiose and centered. So meekness, you're going to pay attention to what other people need or understand. You're going to pay attention to understanding them, pay attention to affirming them, to validate them, to appreciate them. Thank you kindly. That's a word that my stepfather says. I happen to be visiting with my mother and her husband, which is not my father, but he says, thank you kindly. That's an appreciative statement. And
it is.
Says that quite often. He's always said that, though.
It sounds like it's his phrase.
Yeah, it's his phrase.
He maybe meant it much more the first couple of times he said it, but now it's just something he always says. Like,
it's normal.
I'm finding myself saying, "Thank you, sir," a lot when people give me stuff, or "Thank you, ma'am,"
Okay.
And
you're using
it doesn't mean anything
formal...
now, but maybe the first couple of times I used it, it really meant something, like I was actually trying to be respectful, but now it just comes out.
Yeah, it's a formal addition to it. And it becomes you. So it becomes a characteristic. You're developing into that person, you become that. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to see it's not necessarily meekness, but it is. Meekness means that you're paying more attention to someone else than you are to you. And you're happy to kindly thank them, or to thank you, sir, for something. Acknowledge them. That's an affirmation. That's a validation. I believe you're a gentleman, and I believe you're a lady rather than just a girl.
Yeah. I mean, the language that you use does matter. And I think we'll talk about that. Hopefully we'll talk about that when we get around to talking more about idioms and phrases that people just say, you know?
What I was thinking, the psychological error. We've used the term before, and I put it in my notes here. The manager. How do you manage your manager? The person who's got responsibility to supervise you. You supervise them with this psychological error.
Too much work. It's not my job to manage my manager. It's their job to manage themselves and me.
Right. And most people would think that if you're in a win-lose situation. I want to win by not having them talk to me. And I'm going to make them lose by just doing my job and not worrying about them. But how you manage your manager is to use that, or you want to influence them to do the right things. Understand them, affirm them, validate what they want, appreciate what they say. Thank you for that advice. I appreciate that. Even though it was a pink slip and a condemnation, say, I appreciate your commendation. You got that wrong. I meant to condemn you. Well, but you commended me. I'm gonna do better. It just depends on how you receive it.
Constructive feedback.
You receive it and you appreciate and you understand.
If it's an offense, like it could be, the circumstance is neutral. It could be, you could receive a written warning as constructive feedback or as an offense and quit your job immediately, because obviously this person hates your guts, because otherwise why would they even give you a warning? Constructive feedback. Here's something that you can change, and if you change it, everything's going to be great again. Ultimatums maybe falls under that too.
Are ultimatums valid in this relation to wants? So assuming that everything's subjective, so that's the question I want to, are they valid? Can you give an ultimatum appropriately?
Appropriately. I think ultimatums are kind of like a last resort thing. Like, I've tried all of the things that I could to make this thing happen or stop happening. And so now I just want to give you one last warning. If this thing continues to happen, or if this thing, depending on what it is that you need, in quotes,
when you issue,
then, that.
Okay, when you issue an
here's
ultimatum.
Here's what's going to happen, and that's it.
Right, and that's it. When you issue an ultimatum, it means you're done. You're not going to consider that person anymore. Is that what that means?
Your way or the highway is what it kind of means, yeah. It's a win-lose.
What's the logic? It's a win-lose idea. What's the logical end to that? I started reading Plato's The Republic. That whole description, it's coming to the logical end. Socratic dialectic, a Socratic discussion is to take things to their logical end, is what I'm understanding so far anyway. So the logical end of making an ultimatum is saying, you're dead to me.
Yeah, that's the logical end. So are you saying that ultimatums can't end in a win-win?
Right. They're automatically a win-lose, because you're saying you've already lost. Whether you've already lost or you're going to lose because I'm making this ultimatum, there's not a way that you can succeed, that they can succeed, if you're telling them you're on the wrong side and you change this or it's done, or you can't eat here anymore. You either stop cursing or you leave this restaurant.
Yeah, that would be an ultimatum.
Yeah. And so the person, as you say, I've warned you 3 or 4 times. We put you in this corner. We've already put the noise machines around you. At least could you curse underneath the sound of the noise machines? But we've gone through all of that. So we get to the ultimatum, and hopefully you do get to go through all those subjective levels first before you hit the final ultimatum. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the most dedicated of people will spend years going through whatever they can before they feel like they've tried every single thing, and now it's ultimatum time. There's nothing else that I can think of to do. Hopefully ultimatums don't happen in the first year or in the first days of something.
Of a relationship.
Business relationship or a
partnership.
Or a marital relationship, or, I could have given my kids an ultimatum to stop crying in the middle of the night right away. Like, I could have said, okay, you're 2 days old. You should have this figured out by now, So either you stop crying or I'm done. I'm done with this, but I was dedicated. I stuck it through, and one of them did take until they were 8 to stop crying in the middle of the night, but it did happen.
Yeah, finally. At
I
some
tried
point,
everything that I could.
at some point, you'll stop having a need for chocolate in your house,
Yeah.
perhaps. Or you could say that's never going to change. That's just a want. You're going to maintain the rest of your life, whatever the want is. I think once you get to an ultimatum, or if you think that is the avenue you have to take, I think you're thinking wrong. I would tend to motivate, but how do you understand that? So if I want to motivate someone to not want to ever do an ultimatum, because ultimatums don't work, they're necessarily that downward spiral. You're saying in that my pleasure, my value is much more than yours, and I'm going to devalue you entirely, and tell you that if you continue to do what you do, I'm going to cycle it down. It's a downward cycle. It's a hedonism. My pleasure, my value, much more than yours. To win-win, you have to always consider their subjective wants and desires and needs. You have to understand and affirm them and validate them, and even appreciate where they are. Even if it's something you don't agree with completely. You don't have to, that's why I said earlier, you said you have to agree to the law. You only have to comply to the law. You don't have to agree to it, but you do have to comply. And you have to appreciate them enough.
If what you want is to live within that.
Is to have that relationship, to have that society. So an ultimatum, I believe, is never a valid thing to display your needs in ultimatums. You display your needs and wants. I need this. So let's move to that way of discussing this. Do we state our needs or assume they are understood? So when we actually have needs, most of the time, I think we don't state them. Would it be beneficial to state what we need from others, a business relationship or a partnership or a marriage or friends?
Yeah. I think it is more useful than not to state them clearly. Expectations, your needs, you expect that these specific needs will be met. These specific wants will eventually be fulfilled. I mean, especially if you're going into a marriage, you definitely need to state clearly what your wants and your needs are. You can't have that be a surprise.
No.
Huh? No?
When you're going into a marriage, how much time does it take to go into a marriage? Even if you're excessive
as long as
with
it takes.
Even if you're excessive with it, it's a year or 2, maybe 5. That's way excessive, though. Most marriages are entered into.
I know some very close relations that have been going into a marriage for 5 or longer.
12 years, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Potentially much. Yeah, no, I think we've got to be at like 8 or 9 years at this point.
Whether or not that's already a marriage, that's in question. There is no.
Okay, what you're saying is there's not enough time.
No, not that there's not enough time. It's not feasible to answer all your questions before you get into the marriage. Most of the time in a marriage is after you've agreed to marry, after you've been married. Most of the time of a marriage is dealt in the years after the wedding. There's only
objectively true.
There's a small piece of time that's before the wedding where you're deciding, should I say yes when he kneels down? That's a very small window. And then once you say yes, then you have to start figuring it out. And you do have that for the rest of your time.
Okay, so maybe there's like some important topics to discuss first, but then all the rest of them are just not as important as those ones. Like, do we want to have a family? And is this the kind of relationship where both partners work?
Where would you like to be married? Is our religious belief compatible? Is our family idea belief compatible? Do you believe that dad should be involved in the family, or, is this misogynistic relationship you're looking for?
Right. There are a few things that are really important
precursors
to make clear. Definitely state your needs and wants.
Are you really a liar, or are you just lying to me now? So is it pathological?
It's always pathological. We know that. Shut up.
Right. We are who we are. Do you want to lie? What's your definition of fidelity?
And we'll leave it to, marriage experts to determine what exactly those things are. But, you've been married for almost 40 years and I've been married for almost 20 years. That's 60 years combined. We should
60
know
years of
everything
marital
by
advice.
now.
All we really know is that it changes. Every day is a new day.
Yeah. I think it's not fair to just assume that somebody can guess your needs and your wants correctly. I mean, I think
It's not
perhaps
fair.
the more history you have, the more it is possible that they would correctly guess. But it's like if you're expecting someone to just know what you need, then and they guess incorrectly, then you're setting yourself up for kind of a disappointment and upset and feeling the need to set an ultimatum because you could never get it right. And so either you start getting it right now or we're done,
And that's an ultimatum. Would that be a boundary too? Are boundaries somewhat ultimatums?
Yeah. Ultimatums are kind of a finality thing, though. I
Well, it's
suppose
a
if your
final
boundary,
boundary.
yeah, a boundary could be an ultimatum, but not no.
Yeah,
Ultimatums are boundaries, maybe, but not all boundaries are ultimatums.
right. I think that's right. Because you could say, I really don't like it when you use those words. That's a boundary. I'm gonna mention it every time. If you ever talk that way again or speak with me in that tone of voice, I'm gonna note it. I'll let you know that it upset me. And the ultimatum is, if you use that tone of voice to me again, then I'm leaving. Something like that.
Yes, then I'll never speak to you again.
Yeah. There's a ultimatum boundary here, or I will cause you pain in some other way. The win-win situation, though, has to be done by people continuing to care about the other's needs and wants. I think we quite often assume that other people understand because they're people.
Because we're all living the same experience.
Yeah, but it's a bias. We all live in our own biases, and we think that other people know what we know. And if they do know, that's the reason we're trying to discuss these things, because we don't really know what other people mean.
We don't even know what we ourselves need. That's another problem, is you think that you want all of the same things that everyone else wants, but what if
Everyone else wants, but you think that what you're wanting is appropriate.
Yeah. But like what if
And that it's
turns out
normal. I think I'm wanting normal things until I voice them. And then there's that, you have reticence of voicing them, because as soon as I voice and say, I want to have an iguana.
and then everyone's like,
Only
what?
weird people.
You
Only
have
weird people want
never shown
iguanas.
any inkling to wanting.
Yeah, a lizard. You may think it's normal, but as soon as you say it, then you're vulnerable in the group, and you're vulnerable to their questions, to their needs and wants. And then it opens the conversation, and conversations can be uncomfortable at times. So when it gets to an uncomfortable, vulnerability can be uncomfortable. But we know that vulnerability is the right way. An open conversation is better than no conversation. But the no conversation usually happens, and they say, if you didn't, you have to know what I want, because I want common things and you want common things. And if I have to tell you, then you don't really want it, do you?
You must not want common things.
You don't know what you want or don't want unless you converse about it, unless you talk about it. You have to be open enough to do that, rather than saying it appears that you don't want cats, and so I can't talk to you anymore. We're not going to further this engagement because it appeared to me you saw that cat, or you steered towards that cat, and I can't handle that. So I'm just not going to ever talk to you again. Something that might have been a good relationship, a good marriage, if they'd talked about what that steering towards the cat was in the road, rather than just coming up with an ultimatum. That is something I can't deal with, and I'm not going to. And so you develop in yourself everything that meant without ever discussing it. You can't be understood if you're not open to converse.
It maybe takes the responsibility of it's in the responsibility of both people in a relationship to recognize something that might need open conversation about, but then also, like, if you're seeing it in someone else, or if you see that they just don't get you, then you've got to also bring that up too, right?
Seek to understand before you seek to be understood. You do need to voice your wants and needs. If you can identify it as a need you're going to justify that I need it because of this. My want is a need. And we talked about that. Needs are only subservient to wants. I want this, and because I want it, I need this. And here's the reason I need it, because if I don't have that first, if I don't have gloves, I can't pick up those stickery bushes. I need it. I want to pick up the bushes, but I can't do it unless I have gloves.
Right. And so you need gloves.
Yeah. So there's a need, and it's justified. Needs are always justified, but they're always subservient to wants. And maybe you don't have to pick up those bushes. You don't have to clean that. It'll die. You don't have to manage the forest, but you'd want to. And because you want to, you need certain things in order to do it. So we always need certain things to do what we want. And if you need psychological air, you want to have a relationship with other people, you want to live in a community, that community has to agree or has to comply with each other, at least, even if they don't agree. That you have to be open to conversing. You can only get to a win-win situation, a fully functioning, efficient community or relationship, if you're conversing back and forth, if you're discussing what you want.
Yeah.
And that rolls
I
down
feel
to
like
what you need.
when I was a teenager, I thought I was really, really smart. And I kept saying things like, it's all just a miscommunication issue. There wasn't enough communication around this thing. This is why we're having an issue, is because we didn't communicate enough about it. It kind of is like that, though, isn't it?
Were you right? It sounds like you were right.
I feel like I was right.
You're coming to the conclusion that what you surmised way early in life is appropriate. It's just, if you stop talking, that's kind of an ultimatum in itself. I'm done. Talk to the hand.
Yeah.
Whoever said that.
Uh-huh.
I'm
the
done.
face ain't listening or something, right?
Yeah. However that went. But that's an ultimatum. It's saying, no more conversation. If you stop a conversation, if you stop the learning, or and conversation, just that word, it's a opposition. You're talking about two opposite things. To converse is both of you have to be involved in it. If you converse one way, it's a lecture, or it's a yelling at me, or it's a whatever. A one-way conversation is not a conversation.
That's an oxymoron.
One-way conversation. It has to be both ways. And it has to have differing wants and opinions and views. You can't have a conversation of one side.
Yeah, where everyone just agrees with everything you say.
Yeah, conversation with yourself. You can do that. You can bounce back and forth, but you have to bounce back and forth in a conversation between two ideas. You can't bounce one idea back and forth. So the conflict part of it is there in a conversation, and that's what's uncomfortable, is there's a conflict in a conversation, and you're trying to prioritize that conflict. Brooke Castillo has one of her early episodes, maybe it's not early, was want match. Have you seen that yet?
I maybe have. Maybe I haven't listened to it because I thought it wasn't relevant.
I want to relate it here, bring it into this conversation. She says we all have things that we want, and they're different. They're all different. That's what we kind of came up with, is it's subjective. But what you have to do is display what your wants are to the person you're working with, your partner or your spouse or anyone else. You display what you want. And then if there's a match, then you both do it together. That's the things that you do together, are those things that you have a want match. You're matching your wants. And hopefully you have more of those than not. But if there's something that you want and your spouse doesn't want, then there's no match. So it's the match you're looking for. If there's not a match, then you just do it on your own. You'll find some other way to get that done if you still want it. Or you can say, I really don't want it that much. So you identify what you want. You get to choose, though. That was her whole point of that, is it's completely in your control. You're never subservient to someone else's wants. You have to decide if you want it, and you have to let them decide if they want it. If there's a match, you work together on it. If there's not a match, you
work
find
separately on it.
other ways to do it, other ways to knit, because, you don't have to do that with someone else.
Yeah, it would be difficult to be in a relationship where if your partner, like, let's say a company, I don't know if you could do it in a company partnership, but like you wanted to advertise on your window glass, like you wanted to get a painter to come in and do it, and they didn't want it. It's not a want match, but it would be difficult if they're like, well, I don't want it, and so we're not going to do it. We're only going to do the things
That's
that
an ultimatum.
both of us want. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you had a partnership with a window, and that would be the discussion, that's the conversation, and that's potentially a difficult conversation, but
right.
it needs to happen.
Yeah, you have the conversation.
There's going to be justifications for the needs. We need to put this on the window because I want it on the window. Well, what purpose does it serve? You have to talk about those purposes. What purposes does a clean window serve for you? Why do you not want these images on the window? What's wrong with putting stuff on the window? Well, because I need people from the street to see. We have the lights. The backlighting happens in the store. People driving by the street see what's in the store. They can't see it if they're looking through these advertisements on the window.
If it doesn't come to win-win, though, is what Brooke Castillo is saying, is if you don't have a want match, then you can choose to still do it, just do it separately, right?
Right. You exit that partnership ends, you get one store and you just split up the business.
But could you do it still together though? Like, could you say, all right, we won't use the business funds for this advertisement. I'm going to go and sell lemonade, and then I'm going to pay for the window stuff or something. Or I'm not gonna paint the windows. I'll buy a piece of glass and put it up against the wall. But that kind of does turn into a win-win though.
Yeah, we'll put a mural next to it. So yeah, and you come up with a win-win if you want to stay in business with each other. What Brooke was talking about was, in a marital relationship, you can choose to divorce that relationship. That's a valid choice you have that you can make based on your want match. If you determine there's just so many things that we're not matching on our wants, then that relationship doesn't have to supersede, doesn't have to stay. I think she pointed that out almost directly. And consequently, in her personal life, she decided that was an option for her. This was before her kids were out of school and on college. And as soon as they went to college and they're all independent, her two kids, she's no longer married. She was speaking from a base of understanding with that. Like in all of her life, I'm sure she talks about truth and life the way she's living it.
Like how we choose our topics for what we're going to talk about. This is all relevant to our personal lives.
This is stuff we're working with and that everyone is working with all the time. It's not something that, we're not talking about pink elephants. We're talking about things that actually exist. So you have your choices to make based on what the other person wants. But in order to determine that, you have to be open to the discussion. You have to be looking for the win-win. And there's always places to go. There's 2 or 3 different ways, at least, to do anything. You just have to go to those, get to that level. And what is step 6, or what are these called in 7 habits? Habit 6 is synergy. By discussing it, by looking for the win-win in step 5, I think it is, by looking for the win-win, you do get to synergy. Win-win is 4, 5 is understanding. So thinking win-win means you have to understand. So then you seek to understand with step 5. And with step 6, you benefit from the synergy. Things come up that neither of you brought to the table. But because you're willing to think win-win, willing to converse, open the conversation and keep it going, you're willing to try to understand the other person and rephrase what they just said so that it's understood clearly and affirmed and validated and appreciated, the synergy will happen, that new avenues will open up that you never thought of, you hadn't thought of yet, but the thoughts come, the inspiration comes, the intuition comes.
Yeah, and I imagine sometimes it could take a lot of dedication and sticking through it-ness to to get to that synergistic point, because it's not always going to happen in the first 5 minutes of saying, okay, neither of these choices are okay, let's find something else. Maybe with more practice it could, but
you're not even necessarily looking for another choice. It may be one of those two, but you don't have the right feel to it yet. And that's the way it's been described too. Unity. And it really is a unifying thing. A want match is a unity. You have to have a unity in what you're doing. So if you're not unified on the same page, understanding the same page, understanding it the same way, and you can't get to that without having the conversation about it. And it's the synergistic points that say, I didn't realize this. And she says, I didn't realize this either. Both of you are realizing something new. And all of a sudden now the page changed and it became more descriptive. And so now you're on the same page because you're not on these two disparate pages that you were thinking before. The page morphed into something that now you both understand and agree to fully. And you have a unity. And because you have a unity, you can step forward and actually get married this time or whatever.
I wonder if this is a mortality issue. Is this something, once you become an immortal being, afterlife, and everyone's eternal, will we have the ability to just know each other's hearts and know automatically what the best path forward is without having to converse for hundreds of years about the problem?
Or thousands of years? A 1,000 years? Hundreds of years being 10 hundreds?
10
calling
hundreds
it a
of years.
millennium? Calling it a millennium and saying, so you're proposing that as a proposal that exists, and let's say it exists, that there is an eternity, there is a continuation. We are already in it. The ethereal spirit that we hold is already there. We talked about that in telepathy a few episodes back. We have that ability to understand fully without using words. We just haven't developed it. And there are people who have developed it, and those people that have developed it for needs, they had needs. So a autistic person that's nonverbal has a need to telepathically communicate. And from what you were saying, what we talked about before, they developed that ability. And so we can have that ability, and it may take 1,000 years. Maybe we can do it right now fully, but maybe it'll take time to learn it, to not have to converse, not have to have those conversations back and forth. But maybe it just takes enough practice in the conversation to open up our minds to telepathically understand the other person, our spirits to connect. So eternally, the one phrase I think was the biggest one we took out of that immortal and eternal discussion was that you don't have animosity in heaven or in the heaven you're going to. You're not going to be...
Because the hearts of everyone.
You know and you care enough about everyone. It's a win-win. It's a win-win, and you're going to be on that level all the time, understanding and appreciating their position, as opposed to saying, I understand and appreciate mine, and I'm hedonistically going to say yours is wrong. Yours isn't wrong. Yours is just yours, and mine is mine. And that's where we are right now. Right now, we're in a time-delayed, delineated life. And as you're living time to time, minute to minute, hour to hour, you're changing as you go. And so the conversation has to change with you. But if you live in an omnipresent life, in an eternity, in an eternal scheme where there's no today, yesterday, or forever, it's all just now, eternal now, then you do have... that's the omniscience has to happen at the same time as omnipresence. And the conversation loses its value because you know other people, you value them appropriately. You can prioritize. I don't know if you prioritize them. Are there priorities in heaven? That'd be another discussion to have. Because we can only prioritize if we feel like there is a lower priority. I could do these 5 things. I'm going to do this one thing at top. Or maybe these 3, but these last 4, I'm not going to touch ever because I prioritize them way low. So where do we come to? All needs and wants are subjective, and we have to agree in order to deal with people that their wants and needs are subjective also. And in a relationship, any relationship, and every relationship you hold, we're talking back and forth. We have to converse with a win-win attitude that we're looking for the best that they have, giving them psychological air, allowing them your psychological air, letting our needs be met in conversation until we identify where the want matches are, where our unities identify. And those people you're unified with, you work with. Those people you have no unity with, there's no reason to kick against the pricks. That's a biblical statement. To battle, to stay in a battle with somebody. And you have the choice. You can choose to open a business with that individual or to do business with that system or not. Or to say, I'm just not going to do business with that system because I don't agree with enough things. There's not enough of a want match that I want their product and they want my service. I believe all of my notes are discussed, kind of.
Is there anything that's been left unsaid?
One other word that I didn't touch on is trust, and that probably has to do with ultimatums. You can issue an ultimatum to someone that you don't trust.
It's probably you have to not trust them to issue the ultimatum.
To give an ultimatum. And trust, and that's where that word came out of this Stephen Covey description of the win-win too. It says you can try to build the trust bank, your emotional bank. He calls it empathic listening. By empathic listening, you give psychological air. You're building the emotional bank of someone else and building trust. You can try to fund that, but if the person isn't willing to receive it, then it doesn't matter how well you think you did. Nothing you do is a deposit unless the other person perceives it as such. So you could do things, but they could still say, that's just manipulation. You're just trying to technique me into this, and I'm not going to allow that. The other person has to be open to it as well. That's the other side of win-win. You can't win-win if you have someone with a lose on the other side. It says, you're just trying to win, and I don't want you to win. I'm going to make sure you lose. So it has to be both ways. Two people have to do it. You can't give trust to somebody. You can't say trust me, and it actually means anything. I want you to trust me. That means nothing.
That means nothing.
The other person has to receive the trust, and you both have to want it. A mutual trust, and that's the unity too. I think trust has exactly the same thing to do with your wants and your needs. You have to be open to allowing the other person to do what they do. So did it all close out in your mind? What else do you have anything else that wasn't finalized?
I don't think that there's anything left dangling.
Okay.
We snipped it
No
all
participles. There's no participles out there or polyps.
off. Yeah. And I mean, as usual, I still feel like there could still be more. If we sit in silence long enough, then we'll find something else about this that needs to be approached.
Included?
But, yeah. I don't have the time to sit in silence at this minute anymore. So
We've discussed long enough, and we came to some fairly good conclusions. Let me just close this by saying to you, thanks for conversing with me, because that's important. And we discussed why it's important today and why that conversation needs to happen, even if there's some opposing views and I have to say no and you have to say no at times. We all have to do that. And so everyone else listening to this podcast, hopefully you've had some concern with some of the things we've said, some conflict, some ideas that are different that you say, you guys just didn't consider that fully. Let us know, please. You can get with us. It's doyouhaveaminutepodcast.com is the webpage. It has all these on there and a place for you to make comments. And so do that. Call our phone number. You'll find us.
comment on our YouTube videos. That's the YouTube videos. We'll respond to those for sure. So
right. The
assuming
YouTube
that we
channel
see it.
is becoming fairly popular. And so it needs to, definitely find the platform you will watch on and then continue in this conversation with us. That's the intent, is that you continue week to week. So what are we discussing next week? Is next week idioms, I believe?
Yeah, and next time, I think this is a good time to say we have stepped back. We've slowed down our process, and now we're doing conversations every 2 weeks. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about idioms, yes, and the language that we use to describe the real life around us, yeah.
Right. And how we indicate our wants based on the idiom we uses. Things like that.
Yep.
Have a great day. Appreciate your time. Good night.
Good night.